Hello, welcome to those joining us live and also those catching the recording after the fact. Thank you for being here for this webinar today. We're going to be talking about the current and future state of revenue technology and what it truly means to move beyond CRM. But before we do that, let's do a quick intro so you know who you're speaking to. In the background, we do have our colleague Lewis monitoring the chat and keeping everything rolling. My name is Ann Rice, and I'm the Senior Account Manager here at FuseIT. I'm based in Seattle, Washington, and in my role, I actually split my time between strategic support of our existing customers and also expanding our client base globally. And so, of course, bridging the gap between the pre and post-sale experience, not just for our internal teams, but most especially for our customers, is a particular passion of mine. Also joining me today is our CEO, Matt. Matt, do you want to give a quick intro?
Kia ora, mai. That's how we say hello and welcome in New Zealand, where FuseIT is headquartered in Nelson, top of the South Island. I'm actually in Melbourne today. I've been here for a few days, beautiful city of Melbourne in Victoria in Australia. I've been connected with customers and partners here. And so it's really great to be with you all. I know that we'll have people watching from around the world. So whatever time of day it is for you, you're very welcome. If you've been following our recent webinars and blog series, today's session is going to build on those ideas and talk a little bit more about what we've been setting, the scene we've been setting with our recent webinar series. I've been really excited about those. They'll carry on. I think this might be the third or fourth one, and so if you haven't watched those or seen those, you can look back on our feed and see them. But we'll be sharing the links from this session and those sessions in the chat, so you can pick up on those a bit more. When we talk about revenue technology, we mean the tools that sales, marketing, and customer success teams use to run their work. Your CRM, your marketing automation, your analytics, and the layer of tools that connect and coordinate around them. Today, we're looking at where the stack is heading, and specifically at the gap it can leave between how companies think the journey works and what customers actually experience.
That's great, Matt. And before we get too in the weeds about this, I'm conscious that we tend to pull a very broad audience in these webinars, and there's a lot of acronyms out in the world today. So just so we can all align from the beginning, do you want to briefly explain what a CRM is and why it's an important technology to have?
Yeah, thanks. Sorry about that, everybody. There is so many acronyms around the place. CRM, customer relationship management software. It's important because it creates a single, consistent source of truth for customer relationships. So teams can work from shared, reliable information instead of fragmented views. And while a CRM, that customer relationship management software, I'm not going to keep saying that, so I'm going to use the acronym now, is the backbone of the revenue stack. It works best when complemented by tools that make the customer context and progress visible beyond internal records.
Thanks for explaining it. I think it'll be key going forward. So as we know, based in our experience, most organizations today are heavily invested in revenue tools, if nothing else. And yet, on the flip side, we still are seeing deals stall, onboarding can often be broken or break midstream, and customers, importantly, are disengaging quietly. The technology is absolutely there, but the outcomes often aren't, or they're vague.
Yeah, and one of the things that we've been looking at with FuseIT customers, because they're quite broad across a number of industries, that there is a surprisingly consistent reason for this, and that is that revenue technology has been optimized for internal control and not shared customer progress. It shows us what we think is happening, but not what customers are actually experiencing.
Yeah, and I mean, really, this is at the heart of everything we think about and everything we're building as a team is that customer journey. And from my standpoint, with the sales and the account management side of things, every customer journey in my mind is really two journeys happening at the same time, right? So There's the journey that the organization believes is happening, the one that they've carefully mapped out, either in a dashboard or through a pipeline insight. So the stages are moving through it a predictable way. Checklists are getting ticked off and renewal dates are marked in the calendar. So it's all very predictable, right? It's a logical, structured, measurable process. But then on the other side of things, the journey the customer is actually living can oftentimes be an experience of uncertainty. The moments where confidence builds, and then also importantly, where it might erode. The signals they're sending either consciously or unconsciously about what they need right now. And often this comes down to a lack of visibility on either side. So while these two journeys are often aligned on paper, too often they actually drift apart in reality.
Yeah, let me give you a useful example of this disconnect. So, a commercial bank it's got a long-standing client, years of history, strong revenue, a relationship that looks solid from the outside. And during a routine conversation, the client's CFO, Chief Financial Officer, flagged emerging cash flow risks with their relationship manager, their RM. It wasn't dramatic, but it was clear, candid, and important. And the RM did exactly what they were meant to do. The concern was logged in the CRM, a credit review was initiated, and from a risk and compliance perspective, the system worked. But the context lived in one place because marketing was operating in a silo system. The automation platform never saw that signal. So 2 days later, the CFO received a polished campaign email inviting them to apply for additional lending products.
Oh, not an ideal scenario. And unfortunately, I have seen this firsthand, both from a customer side and also from the account side. And the way I think of it is imagining that customer perspective. They've just raised a very vulnerable concern about the financial pressures that they're feeling. They've trusted their bank in that moment of vulnerability. And then the very next interaction that they have is tone deaf, quite frankly, and out of sync with their reality. It's a real miss, and nobody intended it to be that way. Because, of course, internally, those teams were following their processes perfectly. Marketing was doing their job, the relationship manager was doing their job. But importantly, the customer felt unheard and unseen. They were reduced essentially to a segment or a number instead of recognized as a relationship and honoring the partnership that they built. And it's that gap where systems don't talk or intent may get lost, where the real friction lives. And that friction, if left unchecked, doesn't just slow down the journey. It changes fundamentally how customers will feel about doing business with you.
Yeah, right. I mean, CRMs are core to all of this. They're fundamental. They're excellent systems of record. They tell us what happened, who owned it, and when it was logged. But they are, by design, private systems. Customers don't live in them. They don't see pipeline stages or internal status fields. And that creates a fundamental disconnect. Well, it can. Most revenue teams are managing a customer's journey that customers can't see, and one that makes perfect sense internally, but can often feel opaque or fragmented from the outside for that customer.
Yeah, and it's just, at least from what I've seen, it's not necessarily a focus. So we don't know what we don't know. And from when a customer can't see that full journey like an internal team, everything starts to feel really reactive. They don't know why a process is taking a certain amount of time. They don't necessarily even know who's making a decision or whether their concerns have been understood by the teams that are really going to move things forward. So then, as a downstream effect, every delay can start to feel like avoidance or further friction. And every follow-up can start to feel pushy or out of sync. Every single inconsistency can feel like a broken promise. And not to put too fine a point on it, but there's a lot of competition in these spaces. So if we don't really drill down into how to make the customer experience as good as possible, we will be losing business. And another thing I think about is in highly regulated industries like banking, in your example, or healthcare, we're seeing a lot. It's not just a customer experience problem, it's actually a risk problem. Because when teams don't share that single interpretation, that single truth on customer intent, decisions can quickly start to contradict each other. Sales can see an opportunity where the compliance team sees caution. And of course, each team is acting rationally and in their lane, but they have fundamentally different versions of the truth.
Yeah, and CRMs were never really designed to resolve that. They're optimized for after something happens, logging, tracking, auditing. What they struggle to do so well is represent the current lived context of the customer in a way that's shared across teams, let alone the customers themselves. So organizations add more tools, more integrations, more fields, more automation, complexity increases, but clarity doesn't. We're going to just pause. I'm going to ask a sort of a rhetorical question, so to give people the opportunity to think about it for a minute. If you think about the stack that you're using, if you were to add one more tool to that stack, uh, what would it need to do to increase clarity for your teams and your customers? Would it add more complexity, or what could it do to really increase the benefit for your teams and your customers?
Yeah. Oh, this is what I hear quite a bit across teams, but especially in those that are they're running a tool stack is, yes, it's great to have all these tools, but what does it mean if my team won't even use them? So adoption is a really big thing.
Mm,
And and I want to make it clear also, we're absolutely not suggesting that you should replace your CRM. Not
not
at
at
all.
all.
You should have one. I feel quite strongly. But it's not about replacing it. It's really about optimizing it to its fullest potential and really using whatever ability you have to extend it into shared environments where your customers and your teams operate with the same visible context. So it's no longer just a record of interactions. It's more of a shared understanding.
Mm,
Think of spaces where customers can actually see what stage things are at, and teams can see the why, not just the what, that isolated behavior that we're seeing from customers. And essentially where intent, risk, and opportunity are all interpreted in one place and then reused everywhere that team and that customer is working.
yeah, it's such an important point because when that shared context exists, conversations stop feeling transactional and start feeling intentional. Customers don't have to repeat themselves, teams don't accidentally talk past each other. It becomes more cohesive. Your CRM still plays that critical role. It remains the backbone, the system of record, but it's no longer the only system that defines the journey because the future of customer experience isn't built inside just a single tool. It's built in a space, in the space where everyone could see the same story unfolding at the same time.
Yeah, and I think that why now is because we're being tasked as teams to do more on tighter time frames and with less resources. And obviously, I have a sales background, and I think about how much the model of sales fundamentally has shifted. In the past, your traditional B2B model really relied on a single internal champion, that one person who really drives things forward. They advocate for the new solution, they gather the requirements, build the business case, and of course, socialize it internally. And for a really long time, even in SaaS sales, that worked. Deals were absolutely simpler. Buying groups were, of course, smaller. And then the champion could realistically carry that full context from one conversation to the next and from the discovery to the sale. But at least what we're seeing is that's not really the reality of most revenues selling and also buying today.
Yeah, and in complex B2B deals, buyers now research for weeks or months before even engaging sales directly. They're not just browsing, they're comparing specs, sharing documentation internally across multiple stakeholders, and forming opinions well before a first conversation happens. And yet, traditionally, all of that insight disappears. None of it becomes visible to sales until someone fills out a form or sends an email.
It's such a missed opportunity, right? But
Mm.
we just did not have that technology previously, I don't think, or maybe even understanding the importance of it. So what that means, of course, with the current state of things is the sales conversation doesn't really start at the beginning of the journey for the customer. It starts well after the real decision making has begun, and certainly after assumptions have been formed, maybe even internal opinions have been solidified, and objections may already exist that have not been voiced to anyone on the revenue team. So then, of course, sales walks into the room or walks into the Zoom call thinking that they're shaping this purchase, that they're going to need to do is make up the paperwork. But in reality, they're catching up to all of the groundwork laid by the customer.
Yeah, and what we're seeing is the teams that are solving this are introducing collaborative spaces, collaborative deal spaces. These are live shared environments tied to a specific buying journey, not generic portals or static data rooms. Within these spaces, the buyers can save and compare options across the evaluation, invite additional stakeholders into the process, procurement, legal, finance, technical teams, flag questions or concerns as they arise, and track evaluation steps and decision milestones together. It's interesting. I recently got sent a contract to look at, and I was like, I want to share this with my CFO and my people and capability leader, and I couldn't do it. I wasn't able to kind of refer it to them. I was like, we need one of these spaces.
I know, right? And in all of my years consulting with customers and building out these complex deals, it's so rare that this is actually used. I'm seeing that shift more and more, and obviously we're working on that here, but it's massive to be able to just show them everything rather than have to siphon through email thread. That's just a nightmare for me, at least. So I feel you. And of course, I speak a lot about sales, but this is not happening in isolation from sales. On the seller side, we have our account teams that need to see every meaningful interaction reflected inside the CRM or in these deal spaces. They can also see what's being reviewed and where the buying group is aligned and where different stakeholders might be getting stuck. So when you think about, all right, maybe you've got your champion, but you've also got your data privacy person, or you've got your integrations team. So this allows you to have a more holistic view of the actual process. And again, it's not through assumptions, it's through actual behavior.
That kind of shared visibility transforms that sales conversation. It allows technical objections to be raised sooner when there's still time to address them. Consensus gaps become visible before they derail the deal, and the full buying group stays in view, not just the loudest voice in the room.
Oh, absolutely. And it's mutually beneficial. It reduces risk on both sides because your buyer feels supported rather than burdened with more things to run up the chain. And sales, of course, feels informed instead of reactive, right? I can't tell you how many times I've been just putting out fires, and it doesn't have to be that way. Really, as we move into this modern B2B selling environment, we know that one champion isn't enough. And so that shared context is really what closes the gap between interest and confidence and ultimately leads to more deals and faster. So taking one step back though, pre-sale, if those pre-sales if the pre-sale space is where the deals are won, where we initially have that agreement and the quote unquote sign off, the handoff from pre to post is often where we see relationships get lost, where new team is now taking on this relationship. And it's absolutely not because of bad intent or lack of interest, but it's the moment where the momentum that you've been building can meet fragmentation. So we've got a signed agreement, expectations on both sides are high, and yet we see again and again that this is where customers most frequently feel something slip.
Yeah, that's right. This is about consistently providing the customer with an excellent journey through the whole process. So after a complex sale, onboarding is rarely seen as a single motion, right? It involves multiple internal teams, implementation, support, training, sometimes compliance, all moving simultaneously. Internally, activity is going on. Every team is working hard to make sure that that customer is onboarded well. Then no one's being lazy, tasks are moving, work is genuinely happening. But from the customer's perspective, it often looks like silence. They don't know what's complete. They don't know what's delayed. They don't know who owns the next step. They've just signed the deal and then something's gone quiet.
Yeah, and I mean this is huge because it's that lack of visibility, it's that lack of collaboration that can cause anxiety, even when, as you said, Matt, nothing's going wrong. Because customers can start to wonder, and it's a very human need to know what did we miss something? Is this stalled? Do we need to escalate to somebody? Do we even know who that person would be? And so that confidence and the excitement that we have on signing the deal can turn to concern, not because of a failure or a mismatch in the customer and the product fit, but because the reassurance disappeared at that exact moment where it mattered most.
Yeah, and we've seen organizations solve this by rethinking where onboarding lives. When onboarding happens inside the same shared collaborative workspace that the customer used during evaluation, during the point of sale and pre-sale, continuity is built in. There's no abrupt transition, no sense of being handed off to a faceless process. The space simply evolves. The same environment now shows implementation milestones and current status, documentation, approvals, and outstanding items, open questions and next steps. This is visible to everybody.
And that's really what it is, right? Because the context doesn't have to be handed over, summarized. You don't have to have an internal call pre-handoff because this information, this collaboration, it was never siloed in the first place. So sales doesn't disappear. Your delivery or implementation team, they're not starting from zero with no information. And again, critically, the customer doesn't feel like they have to start all over. I know nobody has time to repeat themselves, right? So wouldn't it be great if everyone was on the same page from the beginning? Because what the ideal state here is and what we're building together is that the experience is continuity. It's a sense that the organization, the company remembers the person, remembers the deal. They understand this client's journey and goals, and they're intentionally guiding them forward into the next step together.
Yeah, and for me, when handoff works in that way, relationships don't reset at the point of sale, they deepen. Trust is maintained through promises and it's reinforced through visibility.
Yeah. And I mean, this is just so critical. And as I mentioned, and I'll say one more time, we just cannot afford any teams that I know of to miss this step. So it's really worth taking a long look and seeing where that system might be broken or at least where it can be improved. Because when you step back and you look across the entire customer journey from discovery, pre-sale, post-sale, onboarding, all of that, the challenges, as we said, trace back to the same structural problem. Because currently the journey belongs to the organization and the customer is effectively a passenger. We define as a company the stages, we control the systems, we decide where information lives and when it moves over to our customer. And they're invited in at moments, but they're rarely given the whole map of what to expect and what success looks like.
Yeah, and I think the future of when we talk about the future of revenue technology, putting the customer at the center and supporting great customer journeys, which are seamless, fundamentally changes that dynamic. Shared workspaces create shared ownership of the journey itself. Processes become visible, not inferred. Responsibility becomes transparent, not assumed. Updates don't need to be chased, translated, or re-explained. The journey stops being something that happens to the customer and becomes something that they actively participate in.
Yeah, and it's the shared visibility. It's not just an efficiency or economic gain. Again, to bring it down to a human level, it's a trust mechanism.
Yeah.
Because when customers can see the journey, they don't just feel informed, they feel respected. They can understand why a delay might happen, and they can recognize progress in whatever space it's taking place. And they also believe that the organization and its people have things under control, even when the work is complex.
So when confidence increases, outcomes change. Sales cycles shorten because buyers trust the process. Onboarding smooths because expectations stay aligned. And that risk reduces because intent is shared, not inferred. And relationships don't reset at each stage. They compound over time. I'm going to ask one of those quick questions again for just people to think about. Beyond the sales cycle, what metrics or signals does your team use to track the health of what we call the customer journey? How do you measure something as qualitative as trust or confidence?
Oh, I definitely want answers to this because I can tell you a CSAT is not enough by half. As we start to wind this conversation down, I just once again want to bullet point that the future state isn't about more tools and more automation. And I know a lot of people are really taking a hard look at their tech stack, at the same time utilizing AI for more and more. But to remember the fundamentals, what we're asking is about changing who the journey belongs to. Because when ownership of the process is shared, the experience is going to improve. Your risk will decrease and trust will become something that you design collaboratively, excuse me, not just something that you hope survives your broken process.
I think it's so important because it really structures the way in which you start to change your tech stack and the tools you choose to make sure that that customer journey is really being able to be identified, but also strengthened and supported. So we want to leave you with one simple question, not a framework, not a maturity model, just something you can take back to your team and ask honestly. At each stage of your customer journey, pre-sale and post-sale, ask yourself who can see where things stand right now. Not who should be able to see it, not who can piece it together after a few emails and meetings, but who can actually see the current state of the journey as it's happening.
And if your answer is, oh, well, most of us internally and customer partially, maybe not as much as we'd like, well, that's your gap. It's the moment where the intent gets lost and where confidence on either side starts to wobble and where friction quietly enters a relationship. It's the gap between activities and actual understanding, between progress and perceived progress. And it's rarely caused, again, by people or effort. It's usually caused by visibility.
That's right. So this gap is also where revenue technology to make the most of your CRM starts to matter most. Not because CRM is broken, not because teams aren't disciplined enough, but because managing journeys people can't see will always feel slow, reactive, or inconsistent to the people that are actually living them. This shared visibility changes that. It gives customers confidence without requiring explanation. It gives teams alignment without constant coordination.
Yeah, and we're not going to ask you to start building out new tools or saying, okay, well, this is an extra tool we need, though we can definitely have that conversation because we have some answers. But again, we're starting from the baseline. Start as your team, as your organization, by asking who owns the journey and who can actually see it. Because the moment that journey becomes visible, everything starts to move faster with less friction and far more trust. And that's really the opportunity that we've located across industries. And I firmly believe as we move into an ever more challenging, ever more competitive environment in tech, that the organizations that define customer experience over the next decade won't be the ones that have the most tools or the most complex architecture or the most use of AI. They're going to be the ones that recognized something far more fundamental, root level, that the journey doesn't just belong to your company and organization, it belongs to your customer at the end of the day. And they are going to be the ones who have these organizations who succeed will be the ones who have courage to design and rework their systems, their processes, and their ways of working around that shared reality.
Yeah, and when that journey is visible, trust compounds. When ownership is shared, friction fades. And when customers feel confident navigating complex decisions, relationships don't just last, they grow. I just want to say thank you for spending time with us today. If any of this resonated with you, challenged your thinking, or sparked a new idea, we'd generally love to continue the conversation with you. We'll put contact details in the feed below. And thanks so much for chatting through this with me. And thank you, Lewis, for helping support. We'll be doing more of these. We've already had guest speakers on, and we'll be doing more of that over the coming months as we continue this conversation. Thank you so much.
Well,